and welcome. Raise your inner game today. I'm David Levin. This is our Friday episode, so we're talking about the inner game of life. Tuesdays are for the mental game of sports and competition. Fridays are for the rest of our lives. So how are you doing this week? How are you feeling? The holidays are rapidly approaching, less than 2 weeks until Christmas. Hard to believe. Hope that's going well for you. I said last week it was painfully cold here. This week, even worse. Felt like 12 below the other night. Literally painful. I had to shovel snow yesterday for the first time this year. It was an easy one, just a little dusting, but still, don't love that. One nice thing, when it gets this cold, I switch to indoor treadmill runs, and I've started to like those more and more, especially since I've started to watch a show on my iPad while I run. That's a big improvement. Entertaining, also, passes the time very nicely. I put on my noise-canceling AirPods, off I go. That's actually been pretty excellent. So, plenty to talk about this week. As always, Assad out in Syria, that's huge news. Christopher Wray out at the FBI, also pretty big. Young people wanting to be influencers for their career. Going to talk about ways to limit tech distractions, our challenge of the week, and some good new recommendations. All right, we'll start with ups and downs. So what gave me a lift this week and what things are pulling me down? For my ups, the first one was my daughter, 16, having her first official gig as a singer and performer. She's played a bunch of times for one thing or another, but this was just her playing guitar and singing at an event where people were just sitting and listening and clapping between songs and all that. We weren't thinking of it as a gig originally. We didn't expect it to be what it was. We thought you were just going to be background music as people milled around. In this old church, it was part of a local historic tour day. But it ended up, again, just her as the center of attention. So I think of it as her first real gig. And it was great. She's really becoming quite good. Her voice is genuinely lovely. Her guitar playing, it's all pretty solid and for real, which makes me happy. She doesn't have any aspirations to actually be a performer, going forward. But it was funny afterwards. She was like, is it possible I could actually get paid for doing that? I would much prefer that to working at a regular job, like a coffee shop or something. So she's thinking about the possibilities there. And of course, I was off and running with that. To the point, I was even thinking about maybe she and I forming a little band, a duo, me accompanying her, finding gigs in the area. That's probably not going to happen and maybe shouldn't happen, but it was fun to think about. Also feeling good about Peter at school, his second year in college. It was a harder semester than he's had so far, but he's done now. Be home in just a few days for the break, which is great. But the best part is he's really enjoying the work. He's in architecture, and it seems like it's a great fit for his interests and his talents and his abilities. One little example. He finished up the main deadline work for his big project for the semester. And now he has a few days to make some final tweaks before, turning the final thing in. No time pressure on that at all. And I was talking with him the other night, and he said, this last stuff is actually just fun for me. He actually likes it and finds the work genuinely satisfying. That's the greatest thing for me. Coming into the program, he thought it sounded interesting, but he didn't have any actual experience with architecture. Most of his work in the past has been more fine arts. He could easily have decided, all the right angles and the strict formatting requirements and all that were just not for him, too constricting, whatever. Also, the work has been almost entirely done in the computer versus the tactile work he's used to. So again, he could easily have discovered it wasn't for him, but he's really loving it and seems to be genuinely good at it. And that makes me very happy. Of course, I'm not happy because I wanted him to be an architect. I wanted him to find something that he was loving, and it just looks like this is just a really good fit for him. That's just so great. The last one, I've decided to expand my coaching beyond sports and athletes to working with leaders in companies, executive coaching. I actually did that kind of work years ago, before the sports work, with my previous book, Don't Just Talk, Be Heard. So that was communication, presentation coaching. Always enjoyed it. But the big driver now is just that I love direct coaching. The online business with the training courses, that's great too. Excuse me. But I really love the personal connection, seeing the transformation, and especially when it goes beyond one specific area like sports to someone's life in general, because that was always the goal with all of it. So anyway, I'm pretty excited about that too. It's not life coaching. It really is still about peak performance, just in a work context. Focus, productivity, communication, decision-making, creativity. Those are my main areas of expertise, and I'm excited to start helping people again work at their highest level and enjoy themselves more in that work. If you know anyone looking for coaching like that, please let me know. I would love to talk with them. For my downs, the big one has been some people's reactions to the murder of the insurance company CEO. It just sort of breaks me to see people being so callous about it, celebrating it, mocking it. He somehow deserved it. I mentioned last week my new video, Why People Are Going So Crazy and What You Can Do About It, and that I'm planning to add a new Crazy of the Week section to the pod. We'll get to that in a minute. But I meant for that to be mostly funny, just to point out what's happening and how extreme and sort of ridiculous it can be. This example could not be less funny, but it is still a great example. We are losing our collective mind, or at least a lot of us are. We're losing our connection to our humanity. And it's all because we're getting pulled down to a lower level of thinking and acting. You have to be operating at a pretty base level to celebrate something as horrific and violent as this. You really do. This is a classic example of something you will be ashamed of when you get back to a normal place. And that's actually a great marker for what level you're on. We never regret the things we do from our highest place, right? Generous, open, caring, supportive, creative. We love all that, as we should. It's the mean and stupid and ugly things we say and do that we regret, also as we should. And everyone who's making light of this or celebrating it is just awful and depressing. You can be genuinely and appropriately outraged at the things a company or an industry is doing. There's nothing wrong with that, and plenty to be outraged about. But if you let that anger pull you down so far that you lose your basic human decency and empathy and self-respect, you have become part of the problem. And you are going to regret that someday, or at least we hope you get back to a place where you can have that perspective. So that's a bummer to see for the rest of us, right? It adds to our own downward pull, for sure. A similar thing for me is all the people sucking up to Trump now. It's just sickening. I saw a video the other day, one of the never-ending transition celebrations, and there was this group of people all dressed up and doing that ridiculous-looking Trump dance he does. I mean, it looks stupid when he does it, always has, also looks stupid when anyone does it, right? Of course it does. But they're all doing it anyway because, hey, we're on the team, right? We're in the tribe. It's just so sad and depressing to see. We never worshipped presidents like that before, and we shouldn't. But Trump is really more of a cult leader than a president, and his supporters act more like cult members than normal people. And it's just depressing as hell. And also, just a personal note, unattractive. Hopefully, someday people will wake up and think, what was I thinking? Which, by the way, is the other great marker. If a time will come when you look back at something and say, oh man, what was I thinking when I did that? That's another sign that you are operating from a lower level. Anyway, that's ups and downs this week. Next up, top stories. The big story this week has to be the uprising in Syria, ousting Assad after 13 years of civil war, 50 years of brutal family-led dictatorship. It's crazy to think about all the implications of that. First, just at a personal level, I honestly can't imagine how horrific and brutal life has been for those people. He used chemical weapons on them, hundreds of thousands killed, friends, family, neighbors, millions displaced to other countries. It's basically Gaza, but in their own country. The levels of suffering and fear and despair, just unimaginable. And, again, it's been going on for 13 years. It would be so easy in that to think it would never end. And then all of a sudden, in like 10 days, it's over. He's gone. A new government in place, emptying out the prisons of political prisoners, refugees returning home. I don't know how you can see that as anything other than being great and wonderful for the people of Syria. It's also a big loss for Iran and their influence. It's a big loss for Russia. It's a win for Israel, though they might be messing things up a bit there. It's just a great thing in so many ways. At the same time, it's not at all certain how it ends up. Their situation there started as part of the Arab Spring back in, I think, 2010. And pretty much all those other countries whose uprising seemed, successful at the time have had really serious problems since then. Factions continuing to fight, more civil war, Islamists taking over, unrest, new authoritarians coming in. And of course, the country itself and the economy are basically in ruins. Even if the new leaders have the best intentions, it's going to be hard to make things better quickly enough for people to stay satisfied and patient and not again start to fight over things they need in their communities. Anyway, it's super complicated, and of course, I only know what I've read and heard. But I think we have to celebrate it and hope for the best and help as best we can. Which brings me back to the depressing reality of Trump's nominations. I've been watching the show The Diplomat on Netflix. Great show. Really love it. And of course, it's fiction. But one thing I really take from it is that foreign relations, diplomacy, the State Department, all that work is just beyond important. It's the foundation. Literally, it's what holds together the world order. And it requires people who are serious, who have real talent and expertise. And America has been the anchor of that for 80 years. Have there been rough spots? Of course, the understatement. But that's been what's held things together for 80 years. But now we have Donald Trump, who doesn't care about any of that, doesn't understand it, has no respect for it, and is nominating people to these critical positions who simply are not capable of doing the job. He just appointed, I'm not sure if it's appointed or nominated and if they have to be approved, but anyway, Kimberly Guilfoyle, Don Jr.'s fiancée, former actress, Fox News personality, as ambassador to Greece. Ambassadors do deadly, serious, important work. What must other countries be thinking of us? And what sort of real damage is likely to come from putting incompetent people in these important positions? And the biggest worry over time is that the rest of the world now decides we're just simply no longer a reliable partner for good and stability. Think again about the Arab Spring countries. When you uproot the established system, you don't know what you'll get to replace it. Maybe it's better, hopefully it is, but it can also be pretty bad. If we break the foundation of what's held the world together since World War II, there's just no way that's going to be good for any of us. I just don't see how it could be. Anyway, amazing new opportunities coming out of this beautiful story for the people in Syria. Hope for the best, worried about things taking a bad turn. And no way to know. We'll just have to keep watching, helping how we can. Keep an eye on it. Next item is Christopher Wray announcing that he will be stepping down as the FBI director. You may know, but the FBI director is not automatically appointed by incoming presidents. They serve 10-year terms specifically to keep them from looking like they are aligned with the current party in power. By the way, Wray was appointed by Trump in the first place, and he still has 3 years left in his term. And the president can only fire the director if they've actually done something to justify it, some clear dereliction of duty, and there's no evidence of that being the case with Wray. So a normal procedure would be for him to finish his term. But Trump has been very clear that he's unhappy with Wray now because he apparently wouldn't just do what he said, do what he asked, and would like to appoint Kash Patel as director instead. We've already talked about what a ridiculous and awful and dangerous idea that is. Hopefully he can't get confirmed. But it wasn't going to be an issue for some time because Wray has 3 years left, right? But now he's announced that he will resign and make room for a new director. This looks like very bad news, like one more example of people bowing down and caving in to Trump's authoritarian plans ahead of time rather than resisting them and standing up for what's right. He did not need to do this. Again, 3 more years in his term. And I know he's worried about what Trump wants to do with the FBI. He has to be. So it's actually pretty confusing. I heard one thought this week that it might actually be a smart move that will help defend the FBI. There's a loophole, apparently, that Trump might have been able to use to sneak Patel in without, Senate confirmation in a few months. This, could maybe keep that from happening. Anyway, I'm not sure about that. First impression is that it's really sad and concerning. We'll see. What will Republican senators do? Last one, more bad nominations, but Trump put up Kari Lake as the head of the Voice of America. Speaking of crazy, she is just nuts and dangerous. Huge election denier, shameless liar, and Trump lackey. Does not have an honest, truth-telling bone in her body. It's all performative. Crazy. She is supposed to be the voice of America? Can you imagine? VOA, historically, has been the voice of truth against the propaganda of dictators. She is the embodiment of propaganda. Again, what must the rest of the world be thinking? How can we ever recover our credibility and respect again? Now, it turns out the president might not actually be able to appoint this position. There's apparently a recent law that sets up a panel for that. We'll see how that goes, Republicans. But it just shows again the direction we're headed with Trump's idiotic, ill-informed, dangerous vision for how things should work. Not a lot we can do about a lot of this beyond just calling our senators and representatives, calling out the people who support and enable it, and of course, not giving in or giving up ourselves. It is our duty. I really feel this. It's our duty to stand up for what we believe in, for ourselves, for our families, our country, and for the world. I mean, there are limits, and everybody can do what they can, but let's not, just give in just because. For our new Crazy of the Week segment, this week, couple good ones to share. Nancy Mace, Republican representative. Certifiably crazy, this person. Story is, she was at an event. Guy comes up afterwards, shakes her hand. Witnesses said, that was about it. She, on the other hand, claims she was assaulted by this person who was a pro-trans activist. She had to make that point. And she's now wearing a sling on her arm because of her grave injury. That is some excellent crazy there. This is what you do when you only care about getting more attention and you're a Republican. Is that redundant? Another one, best-selling author, I guess sort of a known crazy person, anti-vax, conspiracy theorist, put up a post asking if anyone else feels ill after being around people who've been vaccinated. She said she and her husband just feel off for a couple of days afterwards. So apparently, being around people who are not carrying a virus makes you ill. Pretty nuts. This one is not funny. Reporting is that over 180 people were killed in Haiti this week because a warlord suspected that people in this village had given his son a severe illness through witchcraft. 180 mostly elderly people massacred because of witchcraft. Boy, people are losing their minds. Examples everywhere you look, both large and small. Check out our video, why everyone is going so crazy and what to do about it if you'd like to better understand what's going on. Otherwise, that is top stories. Next up, Inner Game Gold. Last week we talked about my favorite Zen story with the two monks and the maiden. Always love that. This week I want to revisit the idea that you can't want one part of someone's life without wanting all of their life. This is a great perspective in general, but especially for young people today. I saw an article this week that said kids now, I say kids, but it's Gen Z, age 12 to 27, 50% of them, so almost 2/3, say the career they most want is to be an influencer, to have a big following online. And 41% of adults overall want the same thing. That sort of breaks my heart because it seems to me to be about the most hollow thing anyone could want. famous for being famous. That is just a recipe. It's just designed to be an insecure, and superficial life. Now, to be fair, I do sort of get wanting to be famous. When I was a kid and I wanted to be one of the Beatles, like for real, I didn't want it because I wanted to be a great singer or musician or songwriter, which they were. I wanted it because I thought they were super cool, and I wanted people to think I was super cool too. So I do see the draw. And if I'm being really honest, I still wanted to be famous for most of my adult life in one way or another. All that work on that music career, and even some books for that matter, but especially the music. I remember so clearly when I had my last band, maybe 16 years ago, there was a guy, sort of a friend. He managed a big club in Minneapolis where he would play, managed a couple of pretty big artists at the time. And I might have told you this before, but he sat me down one day and he said, "Look, I know you want this to happen, but I'm telling you, you really don't. You have a good life. You're married, you have a kid, you seem happy. Everyone I know who's had success, it's ruined them. Everyone wants something from them. They can't trust anybody anymore to be a genuine friend. They end up shutting down, shutting everything out, and they're just miserable." First of all, that was great advice. I'm still thankful for it. So I guess this is me passing that on to the next couple of generations. Again, you can't want part of someone's life without wanting all of it. And the reality of being famous, from everything you hear, is not great. It's not at all what most parents want for their kids. Now, if you're doing something you're proud of, that's of real value and quality, and you also happen to go an online following that turns into a career, that's great. Though again, if you get to the famous level, that can still be a weird, unhealthy life. But if the goal itself is only having a following, that is a recipe for sadness. See above Nancy Mace. First, you'll be sad because you don't get there, because almost no one does. But in the rare case that you do, you're also likely to be sad because it's not bringing you the things we actually need to feel good about ourselves and about our lives. For that, we need to do work we're proud of and to have genuine connections with people. Everything you hear about what people value at the end of their life says that same thing. Feeling good about our work and connected to the people in our lives is all that really matters. And a life focused on appearance and the opinions of others is basically the opposite of that. Anyway, that's Inner Game Gold for this week. You can't want part of someone's life without wanting all of it. As you think about your goals and dreams and what you want to do to get there, make sure you take into account a full picture of what the reality of that path looks like and that it has a real chance of giving you what you need to be happy. Next up, raise your outer game. This week, I want to share some ideas for managing distractions, and specifically tech distractions. The reason to do this is not just to get more things done, though that'll happen, and that's pretty great. But the bigger thing is, when you can stay focused on whatever you're working on, it reduces your feeling of overwhelm. And that feeling is something we really want to watch out for, because it's very powerful and very quickly pull us down into a place that feels pretty bad and keeps us from doing much of anything. So the first suggestion is to do 3 specific things on your computer, basically to prepare for when you're working on something. And these specifics are for the Mac. I assume you can do similar things on Windows. I just don't know how to do them. Sorry about that. So 3 things are, you want to hide the dock, right, the place where all your app icons show. And that is Option Command D on the Mac. You want to mute the sound by pushing that key on the top row, and turn on Do Not Disturb by hitting that key on the top row. So Option Command D, mute key, Do Not Disturb key. The idea here is that this keeps you from seeing or hearing any alerts while you're working. You might be surprised how much that happens and how much better it is when it doesn't. I tried this the other day while working on actually a script for the pod, and in 90 minutes, when I brought the dock back out, I had 11 emails waiting. So if I hadn't hidden the dock during that time, I would have had 11 interruptions while I was trying to work. I'm sure you can imagine the difference between working uninterrupted for 90 minutes and being interrupted 11 times. Even if it's just the 3 seconds it takes to click over, see the email, file it away, that breaks your focus. which reduces the quality of your work and slows everything down. Another trick I like is to hide all the other open apps. And the command for that, again on the Mac, is Option-Command-H for hide. Most of the time, I have a bunch of apps open on my computer, and I can always see a little bit of them off to the sides of the dock I'm working on. So when I hide the dock and all the other apps, it just creates a really nice, clean, visual environment, which just feels like a better work vibe for me. Another idea related is to use the Pomodoro technique, or at least I think that's where the idea came from. The Pomodoro technique, or at least the version of it I use, I don't remember what they specifically say in there, but the idea is you just set a timer for 50 minutes. You could probably do other lengths of time if you wanted, but set the timer, then shut everything else down, and just work until you hear the timer go off. Just forget everything else, work straight to ding, now you take a break. And that's the important part of it also. When the timer goes off, don't keep working. Take a break. Get up out of the chair, do something else, hopefully something a little bit physical anyway, for 10 minutes, and then do it again. Another 50 minutes of focused work, another 10-minute break. If you can get into a rhythm of doing 2 or 3 of those in the morning, you just will not believe how much you'll get done on a consistent basis. That's the model I used, the approach I used when I was working on the book, for example. And it just was so powerful and helpful. A variation on the timer is an app called Relax Melodies. I don't know if it's available on Windows. You can set up all different kinds of background sounds, rain, the ocean, a stream, forest sounds. There are just tons of different things you can choose from. And you can mix and match to get the sound you like. And then you can set that to work on its own timer. So I'll start that up and just go until that sound fades out. That gives you the double bonus of having a timer and also something that masks any background noises. That's another great way to go. I love that, especially like I had my car and forget an oil change the other day, and I'm at the car dealer trying to work. I put that on, put the pods in, blocks out that background noise. That's excellent. So the bigger idea here that you can apply in all kinds of areas is that when you identify something that's pulling you off track from where you want to be, a lower level trigger of some kind, there are 2 ways you can address it. One is to work on getting stronger at resisting it, doing that inner work. The other is to remove the trigger in the first place. And a lot of times, and maybe most of the time, removing the trigger is the way to go. The example of this I use is my fingernails. I keep my nails very short, and when they get to even like 1/8 of an inch long, they start to bug me. I'm distracted by them. I'm fiddling with them all the time, to the point that the skin on my fingers will start to get tender from rubbing up against my nails. It's not often, but it's even gotten to the point that I start to get sore wrists, sore hands from just messing with them all the time. So to deal with this, again, 2 choices. I can bear down with my inner game, work on noticing the impulse to fiddle with them and resisting when it comes up, put a reminder on my calendar, track my progress on a spreadsheet and a journal, do all that work, and it might work and it might not. Big job either way, or I can clip my nails. You see? And it's a similar thing with this. You're distracted by tech things while you're trying to work. Probably some value in doing the inner work to resist those distractions, but the quickest and easiest way to solve the problem is to get rid of the distractions in the first place. So that's what these suggestions are about. If you have something you're working on and you'd like to boost both the quality of that and the productivity in getting more done, see if you can't find some ways to remove whatever distractions you tend to have. I know you will love the difference this makes in your experience of doing the work. All right, that's Raise Your Outer Game this week, managing your tech distractions, or really any kind of distraction, so you can get more done and do your best possible work. Next up, our challenge of the week. This week, let's work on putting this idea into action. Pick a kind of work you'd like to have more focus with. Think about the typical distractions that come up. Figure out what you can do to keep those from getting your attention. And then try it out. Put all your pieces into place. See what it's like. Super interesting, by the way, to notice that once you do that, distractions will start popping up in your own head. You'll think, I wonder if any emails or texts have come in. And then the impulse will be to go check that, and you'll have to fight that. That's another helpful part of the timed Pomodoro approach. When you have a set time for when you'll be on break and you can check it's easier to say to that urge, nope, not now. It can wait just a few more minutes. Something like that. Anyway, try this out. I think you really enjoy it. All right, next up, highly recommended. I finished the Michael Idov book. I never know how to pronounce that. Idov. The Collaborators, quite good. Definitely recommend that. Started a new one. It's very interesting. It's the second or maybe even the third book I've read from this author, recommended from my brother-in-law. This writer writes about things that really happened in history. They're not fiction. But he's such an interesting writer, and he's gone into such detail with research in the material that they're every bit as intriguing and exciting and page-turning as if they actually were fiction. And in some ways, it's almost even more so because you know it's real, and you're really getting the excitement that comes out of the reality of it. It's not a made-up story. It's actually pretty remarkable. The author's name is Ben McIntyre. He's best known for books about World War II, and of course, plenty of thrilling stories to tell there. This book is called The Siege, and it's about a group of Iranian Arabs who took over the Iranian embassy in London in 1980. Not the kind of thing I would expect to find interesting, but he's such a good writer. Again, I'm just immediately pulled in. It's very well done so far. Some music. My son went to a show out in Amherst, out at college town there. Had the time of his life. The band was called Ovlov, O-V-L-O-V. Strange name. Turns out it's Volvo, spelled backwards. No idea why. But he had me listen to their record, and I liked it quite a bit. It's indie rock, has a strong sort of early Foo Fighters vibe to it that I like. I love that band. You know, it's rocky music, but he's got a soothing voice. They write good melodies. I love those. I don't love all the extreme distortion on the guitars. It's just a little bit unnecessary for me. Anyway, overall, pretty enjoyable. Definitely recommend you check that out if it sounds interesting. Interesting, too, 3 of the guys, it's a 4-piece band, 3 of them are brothers. Fascinating to think about what that dynamic might be like. And they've been around for a while, 15 years together, I believe. Pretty good underground following. Well, underground to me anyway. Everything's underground to me now. I'm pretty out of touch. Anyway, Ovlov, worth checking out. For shows, I mentioned the Diplomat earlier. Wow, that really smoked me this season. Only 6 episodes, but it was really strong. Allison Janney, the great actress, has a big role in this, and she's so good. And the final episode just sort of blew my mind. Did not see that coming. Thrilling, really good. Highly recommended. I started a new show, a lot of buzz on it, called Black Doves on Netflix. I think it's like 97% Rotten Tomatoes. Spy thriller again. I do love those. Keira Knightley, the actress from Pirates of the Caribbean and many other things, is the lead. I've only seen 2 episodes now, but pretty hooked on that one already. It was really, really interesting and good. It is a bit graphic and coarse, fair warning there. Certainly not for everyone. But given that, seems like another great one. I'm looking forward to continuing with that one as well. And that's it for this week. Reminder, if you know anyone who's looking for some great executive coaching or should be looking for some, please do let me know or let them know about this. I'd love to talk with them. The info for that is over at davidlevin.com. Also, as I've been saying, with everything coming on the pipe, we are all going to need all the inner skills we can get to stay the person we want to be. So if you haven't read the Raise Your Inner Game book yet or taken Sports Academy training if you're an athlete, now's a great time for that as well. Check out Raise Your Inner Game to learn more about that. Otherwise, thank you as always. Let me know if you have any questions. Christmas is right around the corner, a couple more weeks. In the meantime, keep up the good work. I'll talk to you next time.